People might think we're good. Everybody ready?
A grumpy neighbor and a mediocre clarinet player, Squidward for the most part just tries to do his own thing. But while someone like Spongebob may always see the good in him, when push comes to shove, Squidward is actually capable of being pretty kind, and at times as well as pretty cruel. But which moments showed him truly at his best and which had him at his absolute worst? I'm Caleb with Wicked Binge, and this is Squidward Deeds Good to Evil. As always, we're going to be starting with Squidward's most noble good deeds before working our way down to this squid's biggest sins. Of course, at the very top of our list, we just have to put getting back at the jerk customer for making SpongeBob cry. In the fan-favorite classic Pizza Delivery, we see the first instance of Squidward actually having a heart deep down. Despite all the frustration that SpongeBob puts him through in the episode, being determined to deliver the Krusty Krab pizza no matter what, this determination leads to SpongeBob being scolded and heartbroken over something that wasn't his fault, all because one jerk forgot to actually order his drink. As soon as SpongeBob starts crying over this, Squidward takes it upon himself to confront the customer, throwing the pizza right in his face as a bit of petty revenge. What really makes this moment an incredibly sweet one, however, is that afterwards, he simply tells SpongeBob that the customer changed his mind and ate the entire pizza without a drink, allowing SpongeBob to still feel like he did a good job. But that wasn't the only time Squidward helped SpongeBob in the workplace. Remember when he called Krabs out for selling SpongeBob's soul? In the episode Born Again Krabs, after briefly becoming a better person, with the exception that it was all just a dream, Mr. Krabs' return to greediness earns him another visit from the Flying Dutchman. Thankfully, SpongeBob is right there to stand up for his boss. Unfortunately, things take another bad turn when, after being asked by the Flying Dutchman if he'd rather have SpongeBob or all the change he has in his pocket, Krabs sells SpongeBob's soul to the ghost. Squidward immediately calls Krabs out on this and makes him regret his actions, showing that while Squidward may not always put in the effort, he does indeed have a slightly stronger moral compass than Krabs, at least in the early seasons. It's also a nice moment that once again sees Squidward looking out for and caring about his little yellow neighbor. And if you ever question Squidward's ability to care about his neighbor, let's not forget about the amount of Christmas spirit he has. Let's talk about when he pretended to be Santa Claus for all of Bikini Bottom. Yep, we couldn't go without mentioning this heartwarming good deed. Now, to be fair, it was partially done out of guilt, as during Bikini Bottom's first Christmas, Squidward is insistent that Santa isn't real. When he's proven to be correct, he doesn't hesitate to rub this in SpongeBob's face, and only stops when he sees just how devastating it is to SpongeBob.
Say Santa Claus.
It also takes receiving a homemade and heartfelt gift for Squidward to truly regret his actions. Afterwards, he takes it upon himself to be Santa for not just SpongeBob, but also the rest of Bikini Bottom, giving away all of his things in exchange for keeping up the act. This is a pretty huge sacrifice, and while he does partially regret it afterwards, the fact that Squidward was still willing to do it at all and not just give up on the act says a lot about his true sense of character deep down. Or hey, maybe it was just the Christmas spirit getting to him. Someone who could use more Christmas spirit has always been greedy Mr. Krabs, and Squidward was the one who led a strike against Krabs' unfair treatment. Although Squidward was mostly acting on behalf of himself, him including SpongeBob in his efforts, even when he was being a nuisance, shows that he was also trying to get better benefits for SpongeBob too. Again, at least in these earlier seasons, Squidward does indeed care for SpongeBob's well-being and will stand up for him, knowing fully well that SpongeBob has a tendency to let people walk all over him on occasion. Whether it's encouraging SpongeBob to strike with him in order to receive better working conditions, or staying up late with Mr. Krabs negotiating a contract, this episode was a good showing of how determined Squidward can be when he truly feels like it's worth the effort. And Squidward's calling out of Krabs Krabs doesn't end there. Remember the time where he stopped Krabs from stealing Patrick's coupon? In the aptly titled Patrick's Coupon, the starfish is on a quest to get some free ice cream, only to be caught by Mr. Krabs' crane after he felt the presence of something free. Never being one to pass up a bargain, Krabs tries to con Patrick out of the coupon, offering to trade a handshake for it, and nearly succeeds. Before the deal can go down, however, Squidward appears and intervenes, actually scolding Krabs for taking advantage of Patrick's naive nature. Speaking of which, Patrick isn't too grateful for Squidward's help, still not quite understanding that he was nearly tricked. But even if this particular good deed wasn't exactly rewarded, Squidward still made the effort to help Patrick out. And hey, it's the thought that counts. Helping someone as annoying as Patrick shows that Squidward does have a heart. In fact, let's talk about all the times he tries to help the rest of the team. Let's be honest here, for the most part, Squidward can be a pretty lazy guy. So much so that when he does end up working with some of the other characters, it's often because someone is forcing him to be there. But while this squid may take a bit of extra prodding, once he's actually on the team and given a role to play, Squidward does actually try to help out. We've seen him fight alongside his friends as both Captain Magma and Sour Note, and while it may have been a poorly executed plan, we did see Squidward confront Plankton in the first movie after figuring out his grand plan, even threatening to go tell King Neptune. Yes, he mostly did this because Plankton messed with his paycheck, but hey, it was still him trying to stop a force of evil, even if the motivation to do so was less than noble.
You messed with my paycheck!
Finally, in the third movie, Sponge on the Run, Squidward is right up there with the others, explaining why SpongeBob shouldn't be executed, and stating how much he cares for the little guy. So, while Squidward may usually be a reluctant member of the team, this reluctance doesn't necessarily stop him from putting forth an actual effort when it's required of him. But finishing up the good, let's talk about how Squidward once tried to give SpongeBob his best day ever. Now, this is another good deed that is somewhat hampered by what leads up to it. In the episode Dying for Pie, Squidward tries to take the easy way out of Employee Brotherhood Day by buying a gift for SpongeBob instead of making one. This leads to Squidward carelessly buying a pie bomb, and when it looks like SpongeBob has eaten it, Squidward is so racked with guilt that he tries to make SpongeBob's last day ever his best day ever. While this is a nice idea, and Squidward does force himself to put up with quite a bit of pain and humiliation in order to make SpongeBob happy, the fact that this was only really done out of guilt earns this deed a spot at the bottom of the good tier. We've now arrived at Squidward's worst deeds, and oh boy, there's actually quite a few of them. Starting off on the smaller side of things, we have impersonating Squilliam. In the episode Professor Squidward, a jealous Squidward decides to take advantage of a case of accidental mistaken identity. When a headmistress mistakes him for Squilliam, Squidward tells her that he is indeed Squilliam in order to have the opportunity to teach a music course. As much as we may understand Squidward's frustrations, especially when it comes to Squilliam, stealing someone's identity is still a pretty big crime. What's more, Squidward shows in this episode why he probably shouldn't be a teacher, as alongside his usual arrogance, he also doesn't seem to show very much respect for his students.
There. Now how does that feel, Billy?
Honestly, even if it weren't for SpongeBob and Patrick messing things up, he probably would have been found out eventually. Say what you want about SpongeBob screwing things up, his intentions are always pure. So much so that Squidward takes advantage of him and becomes a terrible house guest. In the episode Can You Spare a Dime, Squidward finally quits his job at the Krusty Krab, only for his life to take a turn for the worst. When when he ends up homeless and starving, SpongeBob takes him in and offers to help him out until Squidward can get back on his feet. Though Squidward tries not to be a burden, at first, it really doesn't take long for Squidward to start taking advantage of SpongeBob's kindness, staying at his place for many months and essentially using the sponge as a maid. He's rude, impatient, messy, lazy, ungrateful, and absolutely refuses to try to get another job, or even leave SpongeBob's bed, leading SpongeBob to have a full-on breakdown. This is easily one of Squidward's worst moments, and you can completely understand SpongeBob's frustration with him. It takes a lot to make SpongeBob frustrated, but all of the hearts were collectively broken when we saw him cry thanks to Squidward's April Fool's Day prank. Yes, this moment is pretty infamous, and there's certainly more than a few good reasons for it. While you maybe can't blame Squidward for being a bit petty, especially after the prank SpongeBob played on him earlier on in the episode, Squidward absolutely took it way too far in that he purposefully made his prank on SpongeBob as humiliating and as painful as possible. What's worse is that while Squidward does feel bad about this, it takes him forever to give a proper apology for it, with most of his gestures coming off as hollow.
I don't care. I said it. My conscience is clear.
It's also another case where Squidward is only pushed into doing the right thing out of guilt. But hey, maybe it's a good sign that he actually feels guilty over his actions, considering some of the bad deeds we have coming up. And if you think that was mean-spirited, remember when he tried to ruin SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship? This is probably Squidward's most blatant example of going out of his way just to be a jerk. There would be many episodes in the future where SpongeBob and Patrick would be actual nuisances, but in this particular case, they weren't even yelling or being loud. They were just sitting in their own yards, whispering and giggling and sending each other bubble messages. Despite this, however, Squidward still went out of his way to mess with them by sending cruel messages and prompting a fight between the two best friends. We don't even see Squidward feel bad about this, only regretting his actions when the former bestie starts stressing him out as they try to get his attention. All in all, Squidward was a true jerk in this episode, and even when his house ends up getting destroyed, it's hard to really feel sympathy for him. That was a particularly cruel moment, but not nearly as cruel as the time Squidward pretended to be Gary. In the episode Chatterbox Gary gains the ability to speak through the use of a brand new collar. Naturally, given how much friction they've had throughout this series, Squidward doesn't exactly like what Gary has to say, especially when Gary starts to mock Squidward on many of the things he does.
Let's get out of here before this bad taste rubs off on us.
Wanting some petty revenge on the mollusk and his owner, Squidward goes into SpongeBob's house at night and impersonates Gary using a walkie-talkie. He spends the night making SpongeBob do various tasks under the guise of being Gary, knowing for a fact that SpongeBob would do anything for his beloved pet. This eventually leads to SpongeBob's house rolling away and falling down a steep cliff, temporarily making SpongeBob homeless. It'd be one thing if this was just a prank meant to get back at Gary and SpongeBob for being annoying, but considering that it causes SpongeBob to lose his house, and Squidward doesn't even feel bad about it, it's just a moment that comes off as one of his absolute worst. But if you think trying to break up Sponge and Pat's friendship or manipulating Gary was awful, the gold medal for worst Squidward deed has to be for the time where Squidward tries to get SpongeBob and Patrick seriously injured. Let's face it, Squidward's idea of getting back at someone usually involves a lot of trickery and violence, as he, especially in the later seasons, seems to truly enjoy watching those he's usually annoyed with getting injured or seriously hurt. Probably the most successful example of this was in sports, where he taught SpongeBob and Patrick various games that led to them getting injured multiple times over. It took Sandy stepping in and giving Squidward a taste of his own medicine for things to finally be put right. In this particular instance, Squidward didn't even really seem to care if the two ended up dying or not, which just makes this whole thing feel in bad taste. It's also been shown in other episodes that Squidward isn't above physically sabotaging SpongeBob or Patrick when he's feeling jealous or wanting to take an opportunity for himself, such as when he made SpongeBob feel absolutely exhausted before his big dance audition. Really, these moments just show that at his core, Squidward's jealousy and desire to make others miserable just so that he can feel better about whatever personal pain he's dealing with can turn this squid into a true monster at times.